Good morning, this is Mike Howe on behalf of Frog Recruitment, and you're listening to Frog Radio. Now, it's our pleasure today to be talking to Jim Stroud. He's an entrepreneur, he's a thinker, he's a maverick, and we're talking to him from Auckland, and Jim is in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes, it is good evening here. How are you?
How is Atlanta, Georgia this evening?
Atlanta is typically I would say it was hot, but because the seasons are changing, it's starting to cool down a bit. So I guess things are cool here.
Oh, very, very good. Look, Jim, we are thrilled to have you here today. First of all, because you're the number 10 most influential blogger on all things recruitment, which is very impressive. And we're going to make you jealous because we've also interviewed Bill Borman before, who was number 3. So you've got a bit of work to do.
Tell Bill I said hello next time you talk to him.
Look, we will do, and he's coming up again. So we love people like you guys because you really are at the forefront of what's going on in recruitment and technology and where business intersects in general. So today, what it's about is a chat and just getting to know who you are because, may I say, you sound like a very, very, very busy man. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's a good assessment. I stay busy, that's for sure.
So we would love to know what you do and why you do it. But you do the Recruiters Lounge, the Hidden Jobs Report, Searchologist, Friday Traffic Report. I think you've got a real job alongside that. So that's what we want to learn today. But we always ask our guests, what was the first job you ever did where you received a bottle of soda pop or a nickel?
I think it was cutting my neighbor's backyard.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, that's probably what qualify that.
What part of the world was that, Jim?
Also in Atlanta. In Atlanta, my hometown.
Oh, right. Hey, so Jim, what have you had a big aha moment that got you into recruitment, a moment that, or has it been a slow build your career? Just tell us quickly about how you arrived to be where you are today.
Sure, I guess you could call it an aha moment in a sense. A friend of mine was a network administrator at Georgia State, where I went to college. And he called me into his office, and I thought we were going to play some video games, but he pressed a few buttons, and he said, I want to show you something. I said, okay. So after pressing a few buttons, I looked at the screen, and this woman in a bikini popped up. And I said, wow, what's that? And they said, that, Jim, is the internet. I said, wow, that's a wondrous and wonderful thing. And that was my first introduction to the internet. And I used to go to his office to not just look at bikini pictures, but also to play games and talk on bulletin board systems and get on Usenet, which is sort of the precursor to forums as we know them today. And got really involved that way. And but I was not working. I was just in school, sort of playing around. And the woman I was dating at the time, she said, well, if we're going to be together and do anything meaningful, you have to get a real job. So because at the time, my pursuits were towards Hollywood, believe it or not.
Really? In what way?
I used to write screenplays,
wow. And
I was my major in college was film and video. So to show you how different
gotcha.
My paths are. So I wasn't making much headway in terms of getting Hollywood's notice. So my girlfriend said, get a real job. So I went to the school job center, and it was just a big room full of ads posted all over the place. And one ad jumped out at me. It said, get paid to surf the internet. And at that point, my knowledge of the internet was looking at bikini pictures all day. And I said, you know what, I could do that for a living. So I took the job ad down, went to apply, and the company itself was MCI. And I went to interview with them. And I asked them, I said, okay, what exactly would you want me to do? Because I assumed it did involve bikinis. And they said, well, we're doing something really new and cutting edge and different. We are using the internet to recruit people, and so people are posting their resumes online, and we need people like you to find them. And so I said, okay, that's interesting. I said, I never heard that before, and this was in 1997. And I said, well, how do you go about doing that? And it was clear to me that, by the way, the interviewer sort of ducked the question that she didn't know herself. So I went home, looked at the job they had on their website, did a bit of a search, found 3 or 4 people, and sent their resumes to her by email and said, is this the kind of thing you're looking for? And then they hired me. And from that point on, that has been my start into the whole sourcing internet arena. Starting off at MCI, and then from MCI going on to other companies like Microsoft, Google, and Siemens, and several .com companies and so forth. And I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed the work. It's constantly changing, constantly moving, and I just really like that about
So,
what I do.
so when people meet you, Jim, I mean, can you explain to us what you tell them, what you do? Because I've researched you, and there's all sorts of names like Bernard Hodes or Hodis Group comes up. You've got all these different. I mean, you've got a lot going on. So how do you explain what you do? And can you give us an overview now of what you're up to?
Sure, I guess it all depends on who's asking me. A lot of my wife's friends sort of scratch their heads because they don't know what I do either. But my 9 to 5 job is I'm a director of sourcing and social strategy for Bernard Hodis Group, and in that capacity, I train companies on why it's important to have a Facebook page or some other type of social presence. After impressing upon them the importance of having such, I also train them on how to use it for their recruiting efforts and also for their sourcing initiatives. When I am not doing that, I'm also producing a technology podcast. It's called the Friday Traffic Report, and there I talk about the latest happenings in the world of tech and social media with my friend Jack Humphrey. When I'm not doing that, I'm also blogging on therecruiterslounge.com or on my personal blog, jimstroud.com. And up until recently, I would have said Hidden Job Report as well, but I sold that a couple months back. So that's one less thing on my plate right now.
So are you more? I mean, it sounds like you've found your place in life, and explain to me if I'm right or wrong. But it sounds like you love recruiting, you love people, but you're also quite and you also and fascinated by the internet. But you're also sort of could I say an entrepreneur? You're always looking at angles as to is that be right? As to how social media and recruitment and helping people find other people. Is that right, or am I on the
Yeah,
right track?
yeah, you're on the right track. I do have a strong entrepreneurial bent. I've actually created and sold 3 companies over the past decade or so. The very first site I sold was a fan site for an actress, Jada Pinkett Smith, who's married to Will Smith. I was a big fan of hers before she was married, and actually the goal behind the website was to get her attention and sell her some screenplays. Did not work out, but eventually I did sell it to someone who's more of a fan than I was of it.
So you set up a fan site. Did you actually end up meeting Jada Pinkett Smith, or?
No, no, never did, never did. Although I tried, never did.
Why?
Unfortunately.
Why is that site valuable? Is it advertising or database of fans?
Well,
Where's the money?
sure. The wealth of it was advertising. A lot of the sites at the time for actresses, and this was back in the late 90s. Usually people would post just pictures of different stars, but they wouldn't go as far as posting detailed biographical information. There also was a letter column so that other fans of Jada, like myself, could write a letter to her, post it online, and hopefully she would see it and respond. And I think that was the bang for the buck there because it attracted a lot of different fans and it had a lot of traffic. And I made money on advertising, but yeah, advertising for the most part. It did get a lot of traffic.
How fascinating. Now tell us, what is the first, because we'll get on to what you're doing now, but what's the first
Sure.
recruitment bent where social media and internet, what was your first, because I know you did Recruiters Lounge, is it Hidden
Sure.
Jobs Report? Is that your first foray into that, or?
No, no, actually, I guess the first time I really combined social media with recruiting was when I worked for a company called Atlanta Technology Group, which was a company that staffed startup companies during the dot-com craze before the bubble burst. And in that capacity, I would do the full desk. I would find the client, find the candidates, and put them all together. I would focus on executives or technical personnel. And one thing I did to sort of get around the competition, because there were a lot of dot-coms were really, really high, as you can imagine. At least they were here in the States. I imagine they were high in Australia as well. But one thing I did to sort of differentiate myself was to try to spread the word of who I am and the type of people I was recruiting for in such a way so as to I tried to get myself famous as the recruiter to talk to for startups. Is what I'm trying to say.
So
one thing I did,
so
yeah.
yeah, how did you do that? Yeah, quickly, yeah.
Well, what I did was I would talk to people all the time who wanted to get into .coms, but I couldn't always place everyone, and they were open to other opportunities. So what I did was I would either uh, appear somewhere and discuss life as a startup because that was a hot topic at the time, or I would give them job search advice and say, okay, this is what you want to do to get into a startup, and I would write articles and pass it on to the people that I want to touch base with, executives, and then they would pass it on to their friends, and it sort of spread virally that way. When the bubble burst and the economy switched and we started going into a recession, I started interviewing more people, not because I had jobs with them, but because I knew eventually the economy would turn around. I wanted to build up my database of contacts in advance of the hiring that I would do. Because the people I was able to talk to during times of recession was a lot more than people I would talk to when things were good. Because when things are good, they don't want to talk to you. So one thing I did to sort of keep that ball rolling was I wrote an ebook called "How Do I Find a Job When the Economy Sucks," which is the title. And when I would interview someone, and I'll say, okay, you know what, I don't have anything for you right now, but let me give you this ebook of job hunting tips that some have said have been beneficial. And that worked really well. I always give it to someone after I interviewed them. That book spread like wildfire, which really amazed me. People would ask me about it. I had my phone number inside of the ebook. So when people would see the ebook and see my name and number, they would call me at the office and say, hey, can you give me more job search tips or can you assist me in this regard? And it became a bit much. So I created my website, jimstroud.com. And at that time, it was devoted solely for downloading that ebook that I wrote. And long story short, it was downloaded about 50,000 times more or less. And I was able to connect with a lot of people. One of the people that I met and actually still stay in touch with is a good friend of mine, David Wright, who's also an author. He wrote a book called The Get a Job Book. And he was actually in Japan at the time. And he liked what he read. And when he came to the States, he looked me up. We had a drink at the pub, so to speak, and we just connected and stayed friends ever since.
So you, by the sounds of it, you've seen that you saw the revolution, the move away from the traditional recruiting methods, which in this
Mm-hmm.
country, we're starting to get with it, but we'd say the traditional way was newspapers and things like that. Now it's becoming very much social media heavy. Would that be correct?
Oh, most definitely.
And so
Most
now,
definitely.
do you describe yourself as? I mean, do you exist for recruiters now? I mean, I've looked at your jimstroud.com and your blogs. Are you really your business? Your income now is from helping recruitment companies or professionals understand how they can basically find passive talent
Sure.
via the. Is that
Mm-hmm.
what you do? And can just extrapolate on that a bit?
Sure, sure. The 9 to 5, as I said, is at Bernard Hoodis Group, and that is my main job. What you see on jimstroud.com is actually additional stuff because I enjoy what I do so much. I like sharing. So when I can't get enough of it at work, I write about it on my blogs, or I may produce a video about it as well. And when I do, I post it on my personal site or on other sites as well, like Google Plus or Twitter or something like that. But yes, my main position is that I talk to our clients about social media and why it's relevant and why they should be involved, and I show them how to use it.
Right. So, what are the big obstacles for companies to come on board to get this thing called social media, or to get this thing called the YouTube, or just to understand what you're selling? Do you have any obstacles? Do people go, look, we don't want that stuff, or
The thing that people get nervous about consistently is that the lack of control, so to speak. I mean, you can't control what the entire world says about you online. And so they think that if they are not involved in social media, they don't have a Facebook page, or they're not involved in Twitter, then they're safe, that no one's talking about them. And it's entirely the opposite. I mean, people are talking about you anyway. At least with an outpost such as a Facebook page, for example, then you could somewhat steer the conversation ideally into a more positive direction. I think also that people see social media as being super time consuming. They think that if they set up something on Twitter, that they won't have time to maintain it, or they'll say, okay, we'll set it up and then we'll just outsource it to someone else to actually do it for us. And I think when companies do that, because some still do, I think they're missing out on the potential that they could be connecting with their customers in a way. And the way things are now, if you keep one person happy, or if you're able to give a smile to one person, they're going to share it with their friends, and you're sort of really advertising to not just them but their entire network.
May I say though, looking at what you do, your output looks prolific. It exhausted me seeing your videos. You've got little bits that pop up. I mean, how much? I mean, I've got to say, sometimes looking at what you do and thinking about some of these companies, I would share their worry that, God, if I start something and it ends up being half baked, would that be a fair worry? And I look at your videos and you've got little bits that pop up. You do this. Special effects is a strong word, but so how much time do you spend yourself, and how do you allay companies' fears that once they do this Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, tweeting, or it's a lot of work, Jim, isn't it?
Sure it is. But like anything else, you get out of it what you put into it. One thing I do is show them different case studies and say, this is how company X is using social media. This is how they are the better for it. Here's how another company sort of missed the boat, and their competitors are way ahead of them. This is an example of what happened when something goes wrong, and this is what they should have done. And here's a company that also experienced something wrong, and this is what they did right. So I share a lot of different case studies and say, this is what's going on, this is what happened.
So this is all recruitment companies we're talking about, or you do just more than recruitment?
More than recruitment. This is mostly the people I speak of now. They're corporate clients.
Yep.
That I speak to the recruiting arm of their company.
So
to an agency.
So not to put you on the spot, but can you give us an example of a company you don't have to name if you don't want, but that's come to this quite cold and ended up getting quite good results, or doing good things with it?
I will get in trouble if I mention clients, but I'll mention some companies in general that aren't clients.
That's all right. Yep.
Let's see. There's one. Are you guys familiar with Pringles by chance?
Yeah, the chips. Yeah.
Yeah, Pringles is a good example of a company that's doing social media right in my estimation. As far as the Facebook page, they do a lot of video. They have a lot of user generated content. Coca-Cola also is another good example. If you look at their Facebook page, I think they're really interesting because they basically let the audience sort of dictate what's up there. I mean, they have a set of rules that they put up there. You can't say derogatory things and that kind of thing. Play nice, so to speak. But the way their page is set up and the way people are acting on it, it just is an example of how you can sort of let your fans, so to speak, do the talking and represent you well. I think it speaks a lot. It speaks really well if your fans could go out there and rally support among their network on your behalf, and you're not paying them. Yep. They're basically advertising, promoting you out of love for your product. It's there really well with Coca-Cola, with Pringles, even in the Starbucks page as well.
So that's all consumers. Have you got any? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
Sure.
That's all heavy consumer stuff. Let's think about a corporation or an outfit that's a bit more staid, or a bit more conservative, or a bit more traditional. What would your advice be for them to do? I mean, if you can think of anything. Think of any companies I'm talking about, because obviously consumables, it's great. They've got a much younger audience that are wanting to be fans.
Mm-hmm. I could probably look and send you some examples that I can share to you, maybe through email, that you can maybe post in your show notes for others.
Brilliant idea. That kind of thing. Okay. Hey, look, you were just recently at the Australasian Talent Conference. Was that your first time in Australia?
Yes, and I had such a wonderful time. Oh my goodness, the people there were so lovely.
Well, I can tell from your videos. You posted you posted several before you came down here, and then you posted several afterwards. So I think you had a good time.
Oh yes, I did, and I want to come back. So hopefully, fingers crossed, and a few Hail Marys, I'll be coming back there maybe next year, the next conference.
Right. So you spoke about how to find talent. Competition overlooks. How to find talent your competition overlooks. Can you just give us a quick? Well, I'm just going to ask you some really quick questions. What's the idea around that?
Well, I think a lot of times people look at the latest fashion, so to speak, instead of things that have worked in the past that are still good. For example, here in the States, there's a lot of talk, a lot of buzz around Google Plus, which I adore personally, and also LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. And those are really big sites because they're very popular. People are on them, but there are still some of yesterday's fashion that I think are still just as valuable from a sourcing perspective. It was a recent article in this magazine, excuse me, this website called Business Insider, and I'll send you a link to it. But it said the article was dated July 12th of this year, I believe it was, and it was saying how that LinkedIn was now the #2 social network in the United States, and it had just dislodged MySpace as being the #2 social network in the States. And I saw that, and this was just in July, and I said, LinkedIn's #2 and MySpace is #3, and I thought, wow, MySpace is still in the top 10, because the way you hear about MySpace here in the States is that it's done, it's dead, and everybody left there a long time ago. They went to Facebook, or they went other places. But there's still a lot of people there. So they had me thinking. When I saw that, I said, you know what? I wonder if there are other social networks out there that aren't as popular as they used to be, but still have a lot of people. So I just did a quick search, and I looked on MySpace, I looked on Friendster and Zing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those sites, but also sites like Plaxil and LiveJournal. And I looked around and said, I wonder how many software developers are there, and I found about 59,000, more or less. So they told me that there are social networks out there that aren't as popular as they used to be, but they still have information data that you can use, leverage for your sourcing initiatives. And an example I was giving that just 59,000 software developers that people are overlooking just because they don't think MySpace is hot anymore, or they don't think Friendster is hot anymore. But there's still people there. And even if those profiles are old, so to speak, every time you join a social network, it's tied to an email address. So even if that person has been active on that network for months, if you contact them through that system, the email is still going to hit their email that they signed up with. And if that email is still current, and most likely it is, you still have a way of contacting these people.
Right.
So that was just an example.
Yeah. Hey, so tell me, with LinkedIn now, is it so if I'm asking a very naive question,
No.
But if you're searching for, let's say, a some sort of software developer, or one of your clients says, Jim, go and find me a certain position.
Mm-hmm.
In LinkedIn, have you got actually the software now where you can just go and do a search on who's who on LinkedIn, and then ask permission to contact them? Is that how it works?
Well, you can do it a number of ways. If you go to LinkedIn, you can pay for an in-mail. You get so many when you join, and an in-mail allows you to send an email to them directly through this system, which is good because from my own experience and from some data I'm sure that they could produce as well, if you contact someone through the LinkedIn system, you get a higher reply rate, more or less because people can see who you are. Like if I sent you an in-mail rather, through LinkedIn, you say, well, who's this Jim Stroud character? You click a link, you see my profile, you see what I'm about, and you say, okay, this is somebody I may want to network with, so I'll go ahead and reply back to that person, as opposed to just sending an email to someone blindly out of the blue and they have no way to initially scan you to see who you are. So that's one way. Another way you can do it is if you have contacts inside of LinkedIn and you want to contact a specific person, and one of the people in your network is connected in some way to the person you want to talk to, you can ask for an introduction. So say you want to reach Bill Borman, but you don't know him directly, but you know me, and you see through LinkedIn that I am connected to Bill, so you can say, hey, Jim, I want to talk to Bill. Will you connect me to Bill, introduce me to him? And I would say, yeah, do that way. And the other option is to pay for their more premium product, which allows you to see everything inside LinkedIn, regardless of how connected you are to that person, and you contact them directly that way.
Can you see LinkedIn putting more restrictions on as recruiters globally line up on LinkedIn en masse to find talent?
Putting restrictions on it?
Yeah.
I would, I would say no, just because I know that actually, I'll take it back. The only restriction that they would have is so that they can steer you in the direction of buying their premium product,
right.
Which, of course, removes all restrictions. But that's the only thing I would see them trying to just steer you towards getting their premium product, which I've seen and tested. It's pretty cool. It does work as advertised. It's pretty interesting. I also think it's interesting too, just because we're speaking on LinkedIn. I don't know if you guys have heard about it over there, but there is a huge rumor going on around LinkedIn right now. So much so that it caused their stocks to surge earlier. Actually last week caused their stock to surge up a few points. The rumor is that they are about to team up with Facebook to do some kind of jobs initiative,
Wow.
where they'll be able to post jobs through Facebook in connection with LinkedIn in some matter. I don't know, but that's what people are buzzing about, wondering about. Okay, what's it going to be? When LinkedIn and Facebook were asked about it, they just sort of whistled and didn't say anything. They're real tight-lipped about it. But it's going to be pretty interesting to see what LinkedIn and Facebook do once they get together. One thing that one thing I think I suspect about it, if you have the Facebook mobile app, I don't know if you guys have it over there, but
I've got it.
if you open up your Facebook mobile app and then look at someone's name at the top of the screen, you'll see, of course, their profile picture, but also their job title, where they work, and where they went to school. And before they made that update, what you would see is their most recent Facebook status message. But that's been changed. So I don't know if that's in connection to what potentially you're going to be doing with LinkedIn. But I thought it was really interesting that, now I can look in here and see someone's job title and where they worked and where they went to school, and that's the first thing that I see. And I thought that'd be pretty interesting way to find passive candidates.
Right.
Of course, it's all speculation, but you'll probably hear something about LinkedIn and Facebook really soon.
Right. Hey, and another really interesting topic is, because I'm starting to use my own business, is video and YouTube. How to recruit with YouTube. What's your top of mind sort of hot ideas on that, or what's hard for some people to get or understand?
If someone can produce a video on YouTube, you're already going to have a huge advantage, because most people are camera shy, so to speak, and they don't want to be on camera. In my presentation, I showed how I did a survey of different videos on YouTube. When you go on YouTube and you start to do a search, in my example, I started typing in the word recruiting. And among the top few results, as I started typing it in, I didn't finish typing it, but recruitment video popped up as one of the potential terms of what YouTube thought you were looking for. Now, that was very interesting, because that function is based on the number of searches that people are doing overall. So like if 1 million people are on YouTube at any given moment, a lot more than that probably, but just say 1 million people at any given moment, they're searching for all kinds of things. Now, based on what they're searching for will dictate what YouTube thinks you may be searching for. So just for the point that when I started typing in recruiting, and recruitment video popped up among the results, lets me know that people are searching YouTube for recruitment videos. Now, once I figured that out, I started looking, okay, how many people are actually using recruitment videos on YouTube? And what I looked at overall what I saw overall was that the military here in the States were very strong on using video for their recruiting initiatives. Also, college, especially college sports, because a lot of students are posting their sports reel. They're in football, they're showing their best clips of them in action, that kind of thing. Corporations, though, comparatively speaking, are much, much smaller, which I thought was really surprising. I mean, there are recruiting videos on YouTube from corporations, but in comparison to the military, in comparison to colleges, very small in comparison.
So you see that as a huge opportunity.
Yes, because if corporations are not doing it and you are in competition with them, then you can jump on and take advantage of that.
So you would say... please go on.
Yeah. No, I also want to say what you can do, too, on YouTube is that when YouTube gives you statistical insights on videos. If you go to any given video, there is a icon of a graph chart underneath the video, I think on the right side. If you click on it, it will give you stats such as how often the video has been played, if the video has been embedded on another website, how often that video has been played once it was embedded on another website, where the video has been played in the world, demographics such as male, female, and their age groups. And if you can, it also shows you different keywords of how that video was tagged by the person who posted that video on YouTube. You can take all that information and say, okay, I'm in competition with, let's say, AT&T, and I am MCI. So I see on YouTube that this particular recruiting video by AT&T is pretty popular among this age group, among men. And I see that they have described their video as cool ATT phone recruiting, whatever. I could take some of those same keywords and put them on my video, and then when someone looks at their video, just to the right of it is a related video section. And then if I use their same keywords, and then if I am clever enough with my description, then when someone's looking at my competitor's video, they'll see my video alongside of it.
Wow.
So all the trouble they've done to build up an audience to their video will benefit me as well as it will benefit them.
But the short idea is what you're saying is candidates are now going onto YouTube to look for jobs, or is that right?
Oh, most definitely, most definitely.
Right.
Actually, you could. It's easy to. It's been said, just in terms of sheer numbers, that YouTube is actually the number 2 search engine. That people go to Google, then they also go to YouTube to look for information. And in terms of just pure search, YouTube would be the number 2 search engine.
And so related to this is my final question on this is candidate engagement, which is a big idea for you. Do you think recruiters and business in general gets that or not?
I think they could do it better. I'll give you an example of something that I did that worked really well. Maybe it'll help someone else who's listening and something they could do as well. When I was at Microsoft, I was working with a colleague on a role called an escalation engineer, which is basically a glorified tech support role. And the hiring manager, though, they wanted someone who was, in my opinion, overqualified for that position. They wanted someone who was a software engineer and very well versed. And when we would interview someone for their role, they would say yes and accept the role purely as a way of getting into the company. And then after X number of months or so, they would transfer to another department like Xbox or Office or something like that, because that's what they really wanted to do, but they needed to get a foot in the door, so to speak. So it was like a revolving door on that position. And we had to keep posting because people would come in, and if we hired them, they would go to another role inside the company, in no time. So what we did to sort of get around that, said, why don't we do something different? And what I did was I interviewed somebody who was in the role, who liked being in that role, and I made it into a podcast. And I said, what's a day in the life like for you? And I put a little music behind it, put a bit of a psychological spin to it by saying that we don't accept just anyone in this role. You have to be a special type of individual to be an escalation engineer. And recorded it, made it a podcast, added it to our Microsoft Jobs blog. Other bloggers heard the podcast on our blog and started placing it on their blogs. We started posting the job itself to Monster. We had a link at the bottom of the job description that said, listen to this podcast and hear what's it like to actually do the job. And we found that people were actually listening to the podcast because they were sort of glazed over the job description. Long story short, we got qualified candidates who stayed in that role over time. And it really opened my eyes to the point that candidates want to be connected with. They want to feel like they're talking to a human being. And one way you can do that, even on a really small level with this podcast, is that, okay, I'm connecting with them through the podcast and they're hearing a voice, they're getting an idea of what's going on instead of just another job description like every other company in the world is doing.
That's a wonderful story. That just paints a wonderful picture, actually, that is very easy to understand the success from that. That's excellent. Right. Hey, Jim, just in finishing, we always love to ask people such as yourself, what's a great movie, book, or website that you can put us onto that has excited you lately? So either or, book, website that you always go to that you think we should all know about, or a book that's really got you thinking.
Wow. Let's see. A website that has interested me a lot, I guess, recently would be Google Plus.
Just tell us about Google Plus. Why you think it's better than Facebook, or as well as?
Oh, I think Google Plus is huge. It's going to grow by leaps and bounds, and it's already growing. And it's in beta, and you need an invite to get in. And I'll send you an invitation to send out to other people if they want to click the link and join Google Plus. Facebook has been making a lot of changes recently in reaction to Google Plus's popularity. I mean, it took them 16 days to reach 10 million users, as opposed to 852 days for Facebook to reach that same plateau. Google Plus is a lot easier to use, I think, in certain respects. It has a lot of privacy controls that people have complained that Facebook does not have. As a result, Facebook has made a lot of different changes as far as their lists. Functionality is a lot similar to Google Circles functionality. I think they are doing, in a sense, trying to keep people from getting onto the Google Plus bandwagon because Google Plus is growing so fast. But what I think is going to happen is that Facebook's going to get even more nervous because Google is integrating Google Plus into a lot of its different products. For example, Gmail has 221 million users. Blogger, which is their free blogging platform, has 300 million users. YouTube had 490 unique visits per month in May, I believe, and that's almost a billion people right there. Once Google Plus is integrated into Gmail, Blogger, YouTube, and it's already on Google, it's going to be hard not to be a member of Google Plus pretty soon. And I think that frightens Facebook to no end. And I think they're making all these changes and trying to do all these things with Facebook, for example, making changes on their system just so they can get ahead of that. Because once that happens, once Google Plus is in the faces of about a billion people every day, it's going to be hard to not be a member. And I think Facebook sees that happening. They're trying to cut it off before it happens and endangers their network. Just my thought. I don't think Facebook's going to go away anytime soon, even after that happens. But I think it will cut into their market share.
Wow. Well, it sounds like even more work for you, Jim, to make more videos.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, wonderful having a chat to you. How do we find you? Is it jimstroud.com? Is that the best way, or is there a better way?
Sure. They can always reach me at jimstroud.com. There's a link to all my stuff is there. And I'm always there. Always on, 24/7.
Jim, wonderful to speak to you, and hope to see you down in New Zealand even one day rather than just Australia. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you, sir.